November 23, 2022. 2:11 a.m. A piercing woman's scream shattered the silent night. In a quiet Tennessee apartment building, a neighbor jolted awake, startled from her sleep. The sound of loud, frantic footsteps echoed through the halls. This was followed by the definitive slam of a door. Then, an unsettling quiet descended. Just a few minutes later, a cell phone lit up with a notification. Jasmine Pace's mother, Katrina, received a strange message from her daughter's number. It contained only a location pin. There was no text, no explanation, no context. In that moment, no one could have understood the critical importance of that digital breadcrumb. It was the first clue that would lead to a locked door, a missing young woman, and a horrific discovery. This is the story of how one seemingly ordinary night transformed into a parent's worst nightmare. Jasmine Pace entered the world on May 29, 2000, in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Her parents, Travis and Katrina Pace, were immediately struck by her radiant presence. She possessed a laughter that was genuinely contagious. Her energy was bright and uplifting, capable of lighting up any room. As she grew, that inner spark became her defining characteristic. She was a symbol of pure joy for her family and everyone who knew her. Jasmine was the eldest of 4 siblings. She had 3 brothers, Gabriel, Travis Jr., who everyone called Austin, and Enoch. From the outside, the Pace family seemed wonderfully tight-knit and vibrant. However, behind that facade, the family structure began to develop fractures. Travis and Katrina's marriage eventually ended in separation. Both parents moved forward with their separate lives. Katrina later remarried a man named Scott Ben, who owned a construction business. Together, Katrina and Scott had another son, named Aiden. Despite the divorce, Jasmine maintained a strong and loving bond with her biological father, Travis. She also developed a good, close relationship with her stepfather, Scott. Tragically, life had profound heartbreak in store for Jasmine. When she was just 16 years old, she experienced a devastating loss. Her younger brother, Austin, passed away in a hospital on August 31, 2016. He was only 14 years old. The loss left a permanent scar on the entire family. Years later, Jasmine was a 21-year-old woman embracing a new chapter of personal growth. She still lived at home with her family. She was a dedicated university student. She also worked for her stepfather's construction company. Like many young adults, she used social media and dating apps to meet new people. It was through this modern landscape that she first connected with Chen. Jason was the same age as Jasmine, born on November 9, 2000. He was a first-generation Chinese American. His parents, Mingyu Chen and Shuang, were described as strict, with a strong emphasis on academic excellence and hard work. Jason was a graduate of Nolanville High School. He was enrolled at the same university as Jasmine, studying computer science. While he was known to be intelligent and quiet, he also carried a questionable reputation. He had a history of creating fake social media profiles to catfish and impersonate other students. He would initiate conversations that seemed friendly but quickly turned awkward and uncomfortable. There were instances of him inviting classmates on dates using these false identities. Despite these red flags, Jasmine decided to give him a chance. Their romantic relationship began sometime in 2021. It ended after a few short months. However, in mid-2022, they rekindled their romance. That October, the couple took a trip together to Chicago. From an external perspective, their relationship appeared steady and normal. Yet, Jasmine had never officially introduced Jason to her family. Her family was aware of his existence and knew they were dating, but they had never met him in person. Later in 2022, another tragedy struck the Pace family. Jasmine's great-grandmother passed away. The loss deeply affected everyone, but it hit Jasmine particularly hard. On the night of her great-grandmother's death, Jasmine left the hospital, emotionally overwhelmed and seeking comfort. No one could have possibly predicted that this moment of intense grief would be the catalyst for a chilling mystery. Shortly after Jasmine left the hospital, her mother Katrina received a bizarre text message. The message, from Jasmine's number, claimed she was going away for a week. She stated she was traveling to South Carolina with her friend, Emma. The timing felt immediately off and suspicious to Katrina. This trip would mean Jasmine would miss her great-grandmother's funeral. It would also mean she would miss the family's Thanksgiving celebration. Jasmine had never missed either of these important family events before. Given the raw emotional state Jasmine was in, Katrina tried to rationalize it. She thought perhaps this was her daughter's unique way of coping with the overwhelming grief. Several days passed. Jasmine did not appear at her great-grandmother's funeral. Thanksgiving arrived and concluded with still no sign of her. Katrina's concern quickly grew into full-blown alarm. Repeated phone calls and text messages to Jasmine went completely unanswered. The few messages that were returned did not sound like her daughter at all. The language and tone were foreign and unsettling. Katrina reached out to Emma, the friend Jasmine was supposedly traveling with. Emma confirmed she had not seen or spoken to Jasmine in quite some time. Then, on Saturday, November 26th, a disturbing post appeared on Jasmine's social media. It was a photo of Jasmine wearing a black, revealing outfit. The caption mentioned spending Thanksgiving with my baby. Her family knew with certainty that something was terribly wrong. Jasmine never posted photos of that nature, especially not publicly. Furthermore, the photo was clearly old, as it did not show her most recent tattoos. Over the next few days, more unsettling messages were sent from her accounts. Some of Jasmine's close friends received texts telling them to back off and leave her alone. The messages insisted that Jasmine just wanted space. But Katrina's maternal instinct screamed that this was not her daughter. She and Jasmine had a very close relationship and communicated regularly. This complete silence and strange communication was utterly abnormal. Feeling desperate and out of options, the family reported Jasmine missing to the police. However, without any concrete evidence of foul play or immediate danger, the authorities did not initially treat it with high urgency. Frustrated and terrified, Katrina and her family decided to investigate on their own. They used a phone tracking app linked to the family's plan to locate Jasmine's device. The signal led them to a quiet condominium complex. There, they discovered Jasmine's car. It was abandoned, locked, and completely empty. One specific detail stood out as particularly alarming. The driver's seat was pushed unusually far back. This was completely inconsistent with Jasmine's petite frame, she was barely 5 feet tall. Katrina, acting as a detective, dug deeper into the digital records. She reviewed the detailed phone records associated with their family plan. She discovered a crucial piece of evidence, a 71-minute phone call on the night of November 22nd. This was the last day anyone had seen Jasmine alive. The phone number belonged to Jason Chen. When the family confronted Jason, his story immediately conflicted with the evidence. He claimed their conversation had lasted only a few minutes. This directly contradicted the official phone records. Even more alarming was Jason's demeanor. He displayed a complete lack of concern. His girlfriend, someone he had recently traveled with, was missing, and he seemed utterly unbothered. For Jasmine's loved ones, this was the turning point. They were no longer just unsure, they were certain. Jason Chen was the last person to see Jasmine alive. Armed with this critical information, the family went back to the police. Yet, despite this compelling new evidence, the urgent response they desperately needed was still not forthcoming. The police continued to hesitate. Refusing to wait any longer, the family continued their own investigation. Then, Katrina discovered a message on her phone she had previously overlooked. It had been sent at 2:18 a.m. on November 23rd, just hours after Jasmine left the hospital. It was the message containing only a location pin. Katrina and Travis immediately drove to the pinned address, an apartment complex. They went directly to Unit 210 and knocked forcefully on the door. There was no answer. With fear overriding caution, they made the decision to force entry into the apartment. The scene inside was chilling. Cleaning products were sitting in plain view, suggesting a recent and rushed attempt to sanitize the area. A notebook on a table had Jason's name written in it. Most disturbingly, they found Jasmine's personal belongings. They found her driver's license, her credit cards, and a distinctive travel bag she was never without. There was no sign of Jasmine. There was also no sign of Jason Chen. This time, when they returned to the police with their disturbing discovery, the response was different. Investigators finally began to take serious action. Neighbors were interviewed. One neighbor provided a crucial account, recalling hearing shouting and loud banging noises coming from Jason's unit around 2 a.m. on November 23rd. A search warrant for the apartment was swiftly issued. Inside, the evidence was overwhelming and pointed to extreme violence. Red stains, later confirmed to be blood, were found throughout the unit. They were on the living room floor, the bathroom tiles, the bedroom carpet, and even on the doors and walls. Shards of broken glass were scattered about, indicating a violent physical struggle. A sharp object was discovered on the bed. Furniture had been noticeably moved. The mattress appeared to have been deliberately repositioned, likely in an attempt to conceal a large blood stain beneath it. Investigators used luminol, a chemical that detects traces of blood. It illuminated the hallway, revealing that someone had attempted an extensive cleanup but had failed to complete it thoroughly. The search expanded beyond the apartment walls. In a nearby dumpster, police located a pair of white sneakers. They were positively identified as belonging to Jasmine. The case was now officially reclassified. It was no longer a missing person investigation. It was now an active homicide investigation. Friends and family flooded social media with pleas for information and justice. Detectives began meticulously reconstructing Jasmine's final hours using surveillance footage. Security cameras from Jason's apartment complex captured Jasmine's vehicle entering the parking lot just before midnight on November 22. This was mere minutes after her family had last seen her. More footage from inside the building's common areas showed Jason entering and exiting his apartment multiple times on November 23. Critically, Jasmine was never seen leaving. Utilizing a vast network of over 100 city-owned surveillance cameras, investigators tracked Jason's movements in the hours after the murder. Footage showed a figure, believed to be Jason and wearing a white hoodie, dragging a large, heavy suitcase out of the building. He loaded it into the trunk of Jasmine's car. Later, cameras captured that same vehicle being driven to the location where her parents eventually found it abandoned. A dark-colored vehicle arrived shortly after and picked someone up. Investigators identified this as a hired taxi and confirmed the passenger was Jason Chen. The puzzle pieces continued to fall into place. Security footage from 2 different local stores showed Jason shopping alone. He was purchasing cleaning supplies and band-aids. While phone data placed Jasmine's device in the same area at that time, the video evidence clearly showed Jason was shopping alone. Finally, on November 29, police located Jason Chen. He was hiding at his parents' house. Officers noted visible cuts on his right hand, injuries consistent with a violent struggle. Inside the house, they found a black backpack. It contained handwritten notes. In these notes, Jason was attempting to craft a cover story. He wrote that he hadn't seen Jasmine since November 19. He claimed they had only spoken on the phone on the 22nd. He alleged that Jasmine had a history of running away. He made accusations that she had a restraining order against an ex-boyfriend. He claimed her mother was an alcoholic. He referenced a completely fabricated story about Jasmine once fleeing to Canada. Jasmine's family vehemently denied every single one of these claims. The backpack also contained Jasmine's eyeglass case. A forensic examination of Jason's phone revealed a trove of damning evidence. It contained a photograph of Jasmine, taken in his bathroom on the night she vanished. It also contained screenshots of conversations he had deleted from his own phone. A final, critical lead emerged from phone record analysis. The data showed Jason had traveled toward a rural highway near the Tennessee River shortly after Jasmine's disappearance. Authorities immediately focused their search efforts on this area. On December 1, 2022, the search ended. Police discovered a suitcase. Inside was the body of Jasmine Pace. Her family's worst fears were confirmed. Jasmine's lifeless body had been wrapped tightly in black plastic garbage bags. She was completely nude. Her right arm had been bent at a brutal, unnatural angle behind her back and bound. Both of her ankles were secured with a pair of handcuffs. One of the cuffs was also attached to her right elbow. Her hip was fractured, suggesting she had been violently restrained, had fought back fiercely, or had tried desperately to escape. Nothing, however, could prepare anyone for the sheer brutality detailed in the autopsy report. Jasmine had been stabbed at least 60 times. The vast majority of these wounds were concentrated on the upper left side of her torso and neck. One of the knives used in the attack was found still embedded in her chest. It was a frenzied, overkill-level assault, committed at close range with devastating, homicidal force. Jason Chen was arrested on the spot. He was initially held in a local Tennessee jail before being transferred to the Hamilton County Jail. He was formally charged with first-degree premeditated murder and abuse of a corpse. His request for bail was immediately denied. On December 2, 2022, Jasmine's family, friends, and community members gathered for a vigil. They stood beneath the bridge where her body was found. They held candles, shared tears, offered prayers, and laid down flowers to honor a life brutally taken far too soon. Those who spoke described her as an angel, a radiant light in their lives, a gentle soul overflowing with innate kindness and joy. Her mother, Katrina, vowed that Jasmine's spirit would live on and that achieving justice was the only path forward. Days later, on December 6, Jason Chen appeared in court for a bond hearing. The judge set his bail at an astonishing $5 million. The conditions for his release, if he could pay, would include strict house arrest, a GPS monitoring bracelet, and the surrender of his passport. For the community and Jasmine's family, the very idea that he could potentially walk free was an outrage. They pushed back publicly, labeling the crime exceptionally violent and heinous. The notion of Jason returning to society, even under strict supervision, was utterly unacceptable. While the legal process began its slow grind, Jasmine's funeral was held. Her loved ones gathered one final time to say goodbye to the young woman they so deeply adored. They clung to their memories of her laughter, her tenderness, and her hopeful spirit, trying to make sense of a senseless and irreparable loss. On January 9, 2023, prosecutors unveiled chilling new details during the first formal hearing. They had built a comprehensive and damning timeline of events from the night of the murder and its aftermath. Surveillance footage, digital forensics, phone records, and Jason's own behavior all painted a clear picture of guilt. In the hours after killing Jasmine, Jason had used her phone and credit card. He logged into her banking apps and her social media accounts. He posted fabricated messages designed to create the illusion that she was still alive. Shockingly, he even used a dating app to message another woman while Jasmine's body was still inside his apartment. That very night, he organized an online video game session with friends. He reportedly told them he just had to finish cleaning up his apartment first. Security footage also confirmed that Jason had visited the Nashville airport after the murder. Although he never purchased a ticket, authorities believe he was actively attempting to flee the state but lost his nerve at the last moment. The prosecution was supremely confident. They had a solid digital footprint, an indisputable timeline, and overwhelming physical evidence. It all pointed to one horrifying, inescapable truth. The trial finally began in January of 2025, over 2 years after Jasmine's death. Due to the extensive media coverage in Chattanooga, a jury was brought in from Nashville to ensure a fair and impartial trial. Prosecutors laid out their case with clarity and precision. On November 22, Jasmine had called Jason for emotional support following her great-grandmother's death. Their call lasted over an hour. That night, she went to his apartment seeking comfort. What happened next was described as a premeditated act of lethal violence. The prosecution argued Jason waited until she was vulnerable and then attacked. Evidence showed Jasmine had been stabbed repeatedly while already on the ground. All 60 wounds were concentrated on one side of her body, indicating a sustained, one-sided attack. The cuts on Jason's hand perfectly matched injuries sustained from using a sharp weapon violently. His fingerprints were found on the garbage bags used to wrap Jasmine's body. The jury was shown deeply disturbing evidence: the blood-stained carpet from the apartment, the suitcase she was transported in, and even the broken tip of the knife found lodged in her chest. Forensic downloads from Jason's phone revealed the entire scheme: the images, the deleted messages, and the calculated attempts to create an alibi. Then, the prosecution delivered its final, crushing piece of evidence. On the afternoon of November 23, well after Jason had murdered Jasmine, he used her phone to send a text message to his own phone. It read, "Are you ready for dinner tonight?" This single message obliterated any potential defense. It wasn't just cruel, it was cold-blooded, calculated manipulation, a final, desperate effort to maintain the charade that Jasmine was still alive. The truth, however, was now exposed, and justice was closing in. Authorities confirmed what the family had long suspected. All the messages from Jasmine's phone, about going to South Carolina, about wanting space, were sent by Jason Chen after he had taken her life. The witness list included Jasmine's grieving parents, the neighbor who heard the screams, the store clerks who sold Jason the cleaning supplies, and the lead detectives. The neighbor's testimony was particularly haunting. She told the court she awoke at 2:11 a.m. to the sound of a woman's scream, followed by running footsteps and a door slam. She had picked up her phone to call 911 but hesitated when the noise stopped, a decision that still haunted her. Exactly 7 minutes later, the location pin was sent to Katrina's phone. On the stand, Katrina testified that Jasmine had never sent anything like that before, especially not in the middle of the night. The prosecution asserted this was Jasmine's final, desperate cry for help, sent when she knew her life was in grave danger. Katrina also defended her decision to enter Jason's apartment without a warrant. She admitted it was against the rules but stated she did not care: the police were not moving fast enough, and her daughter was missing. The prosecution argued that while Jason meticulously cleaned the crime scene, he simultaneously crafted a complex cover story online. He posted fake updates to Jasmine's accounts to make it appear she was alive, all while her body lay lifeless in his apartment. To the jury, this demonstrated a cold and calculated effort to rewrite reality. Then, in a surprising move, Jason's defense attorney announced that his client was guilty, but not of murder. He claimed it was an act of self-defense, not premeditated violence. According to this new story, Jason and Jasmine were drinking wine when she found flirtatious messages to another woman on his phone. A heated argument erupted. Jason claimed Jasmine, in a jealous rage, smashed a bottle and attacked him. He said he kicked her in defense. He alleged she came at him again with a broken wine glass, so he ran to the bedroom, grabbed a sharp object, and stabbed her in a moment of pure panic. The lawyer claimed Jason blacked out and awoke to find her unconscious. He also argued the handcuffs were applied after her death merely to make her body fit into the suitcase. This story rapidly unraveled under scrutiny. The medical examiner took the stand and dismantled the defense's claims. Jasmine's toxicology report was completely clean, no alcohol or drugs in her system. Her injuries told a different story. The 60 stab wounds were focused in one area, suggesting a sustained attack, not a mutual struggle. Most tellingly, Jasmine's right hand showed no defensive wounds, indicating she had likely been restrained or immobilized before the stabbing began. The prosecution stated the defense's strategy was transparent, to downgrade the charge from first-degree murder to voluntary manslaughter. This would mean a maximum of 15 years in prison, instead of life without parole. To challenge the evidence, Jason's lawyers brought in a forensic expert. They argued that Katrina's unauthorized entry had contaminated the crime scene. They even implied that some evidence could have been planted. They questioned Travis about inconsistencies in Katrina's story. Throughout this, Chen remained silent. He exercised his right not to testify. He showed no emotion, offered no apology, and displayed not a single sign of remorse. After 6 days of intense testimony, the jury retired to deliberate. It took them less than 1 hour to reach a unanimous verdict. Guilty. Chen, 24 years old, was convicted of first-degree premeditated murder and abuse of a corpse. During the sentencing phase, the jury had one final decision: whether Jason should ever be eligible for parole. His lawyer pleaded for mercy, arguing that the possibility of release decades later would be an act of compassion. The jury was unmoved. In under an hour, they returned with their sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. Chen had taken Jasmine's life without justification. He had tried to erase his crime and deceive everyone. But the digital trail he left behind, the texts, the security footage, the store purchases, the lies, ultimately led investigators directly to the truth. It provided the evidence needed to bury Jasmine with dignity and to ensure her killer was held accountable. After the trial concluded, Katrina Pace filed a civil lawsuit against Chen's parents. She claimed they had knowingly sheltered a fugitive and obstructed the criminal investigation. In March of 2025, the case was quietly settled out of court. The terms of the agreement remained confidential, though it was later reported that Jason's parents paid a settlement of $17 million. To this day, the true motive behind Jasmine Pace's murder remains unclear and unexplained. But her memory endures. It lives on through the echo of her laughter, the warmth she radiated, and the light she brought into the world. It lives on through her family and friends, who now strive to live fully and lovingly in her honor. They do this because Jasmine Pace, so full of life and promise, never got the chance to.